The previous episode ended with Rose being shocked and embarrassed when her maid, Olivier, found her naked in bed with Theodore. So she said, "Did he see that? Did he see us together?" Like that? Olivier, with a look of anger, said, "Miss Rose, what have you done?" And here Rose, in embarrassment and tension, said, "It's not what it looks like." It's Olivier handed her clothes and said, "Here, miss, some clothes." Suddenly, Theodore got up and said sheepishly, "You're a very nosy servant." Olivier looked at him and said, "Prince Theodore, please, consider your own position." Theodore took his clothes angrily, got up, and put them on. Meanwhile, Rose felt very embarrassed and thought to herself, "This is so embarrassing." When Rose returned home with Olivier, he said to her, "Welcome back, miss." While Rose was thinking, she said nervously, "What should I do?" Then she imagined her parents and said, "If they think I'm having an affair with Prince Theodore." She imagined her mother's reaction, saying in shock and tension, "How shameful it would be for my daughter to do such a thing before marriage." So she said, "They might force me to get married right away." Honestly, all we did was sleep next to each other, and we didn't do anything more than that, but I have to stop Olivier from saying anything. So she looked at him and said, "Hello, Olivier." Suddenly, Olivier noticed Rose's father and said, "The master of the house is home." Rose, in tension, said, "What?" Rose looks at Olivier nervously and thinks to herself, "Lord Charliette." In the game, Rose was used as a tool in a political marriage. What a cruel father. Then she smiled at him and said, "Welcome back." I mean father. Her father, Lord Charliette, said, "Rose, how are you getting along with Prince Theodore?" Rose looked at him silently and thought to herself, "His presence is so overwhelming. I really don't like him." Her father continued, "With the noble Charliette house from the kingdom of Koret, married to a prince of the great kingdom of Siberia, we will maintain the peace of our family, unless you have caused a problem with that." Rose felt nervous and thought to herself, "I can't tell him that I caused enough problems to cancel the engagement." So Olivier intervened and said, "By the way, speaking of problems," Rose felt alarmed and thought to herself, "Oh no, if he tells father what he saw, I'll be forced to marry him." But suddenly, Olivier smiled and said, "It's a problem that the Academy Dean praises Miss Rose so much. He says she's not only lucky academically, but also in poetry and music." Rose looked at him in astonishment, not expecting this from him. Her father said, "I see." Then he smiled and said to Rose, "Do everything you can to not bring shame to the Charliette house." Nervously, Rose looked at Olivier and said to her father, "Yes, father." When she was alone with her maid, she said to him, "Olivier, thank you." Olivier looked at her, and she continued, "You were kind enough to avoid telling father about Prince Theodore." Olivier said, "I can't just tell him anything. I need to hear it directly from the mouth." Rose said to him, feeling embarrassed, "What you saw in the study, can you please not tell anyone?" Olivier said confidently, "I understand." So Rose looked at him and he continued, "It wasn't your desire to be involved with him in this way." She was shocked and said, "What?" Olivier returned angrily and said to her, "You said before that you wanted to cancel the engagement, miss, and yet this man must have forced himself upon you." But Rose clarified the matter and said, "No, that's not what happened at all." Olivier asked, "What's wrong with what I said?" So Rose said nervously, "I really wanted to cancel the engagement, but I still respect him, and he didn't do anything I didn't want to do." Olivier said, "So, did you agree to it?" Rose, shocked and embarrassed, said, "Of course I agreed. We didn't do anything embarrassing. Nothing." Olivier, surprised, said, "Even though you were in the same bed?" Rose replied, "That's right. We took a nap." And at the same time, she thought to herself, "Poor excuses. Who will believe this story?" Olivier sighed and said, "I see. I'll believe you." Rose, stunned, said, "What?" So Olivier sighed, smiled, and said, "You have a reason you can't say." Then he patted her head and continued, "I'd like to investigate further, but as your servant, I'll be here to listen whenever you want to tell me." She looked at him lovingly and said, "Yes, Olivier, thank you." But then Olivier suddenly said, "However, you've lost consciousness twice today." She was shocked and felt nervous. He continued, "You should rest for a while until you recover, and I will contact the academy about this. Drink some herbal tea and go to bed." Rose said to him, "I will." And at the same time, she thought to herself, "Is this how he's going to separate me from the prince?" After a few days, Rose was thinking, "The battle between Iris and me has been postponed, but it's coming. I feel a bit better." Suddenly, her maid knocked on her door and entered, saying nervously, "Miss Rose, Prince Theodore is here." Rose turned to her and thought to herself, "Prince Theodore." With embarrassment and tension, she said, "Olivier is shopping right now." So she told the maid, "I'll be right there." She went to Theodore, who said when he saw her, "Miss Rose, are you feeling better?" She replied shyly, "Yes, thank you." At the same time, she thought to herself, "I'm so embarrassed after that time with him." Theodore interrupted her thoughts and said, "Miss Rose." Suddenly, he leaned closer and put his face close to hers, saying, "You're blushing. Don't you like it? To be touched by me?" She didn't respond, and Theodore continued, "Good. If you don't hate it, then I want to touch you." But she nervously pulled his hands away and said, "But, Your Highness, we were planning to cancel our engagement." Theodore said, "Are you misunderstanding what I'm saying? This was my idea to prevent you from becoming weak as you were before. To prevent your desire from appearing due to the sedatives, we should touch each other a little every day." She suddenly felt ashamed of what he was saying and thought to herself, "I've misunderstood this all wrong." But the truth, as we know, is that he's getting closer to her because he loves her, not because he's lying to her. Then he suddenly leaned closer, cupped her chin, and said, "What's wrong? Even your ears have turned red. Are you feeling hot again?" But Rose said, "No, it's been a long time since I've done anything, so I'm hot." Theodore laughed at what she said. Rose turned her head away, feeling embarrassed. She thought to herself, "Is he saying this to me even though he knows the truth? He's also a little annoying." Then they sat down together. Theodore said to her, "Now, down to business. I came today to talk about the duel between you and Miss Iris's." So Rose said, "I'm sorry for postponing it for so long. My servant was feeling unwell, so he didn't allow me to leave the mansion very often." Theodore said, tensely, "I thought that was the problem." Rose said happily, "But I'm feeling much better now. I'll go to the academy tomorrow even if I have to sneak out." Theodore smiled and said, "Don't overexert yourself." "All right, I'll tell Miss Iris. And also, do you have any way to help Miss Iris defeat you? A woman of your beauty and intelligence isn't weak in many subjects like dancing and art." Rose said, "Okay." Then she thought for a moment and said to herself, "It's true that Iris's initial statistics are disastrous." Then she said to Theodore, "What about elegance?" But Theodore said, "Are you going to bet my engagement on that?" Rose said, "Okay, her kind personality, or maybe courage." But Theodore said, "How will anyone judge that? It's hard to assess. Besides, let's see." Rose smiled and said, "About this, if I'm about to win, make sure I'm caught cheating and get expelled." But Theodore said, "Nevertheless, your reputation will be—" But Rose said with a wide smile, "Okay, that can be our last resort. I'll lose so that no one finds out. You'll see." Theodore said tensely, "That's not the problem. I mean, you really want her to win. I thought you hated her after all. But the truth is, you really like her." Rose gave a sad look but didn't want to show it, so she said to him, "What are you talking about?" The next day at the academy, while Rose was coming down the stairs, she saw Iris practicing dance, so Rose went down to her and said after seeing her dance, "Your balance is a bit off. Try to straighten your back completely." Iris turned to her and said, "Miss Rose, have you fully recovered? There's no need to push yourself." But when Rose saw the bandages on Iris, she said, "You're the one who looks completely exhausted." Iris said shyly, Oh, this? Having someone as skilled as you fight someone like me has made me think I should work harder. Rose was astonished and thought to herself, I was worried about her, but Iris isn't as weak as her initial statistics. She's worked hard to improve herself. Iris said, Miss Rose. Rose smiled and said, Nothing. Promise to stay prepared, okay? Because I'm going to work even harder to crush you. Iris said happily, Okay, I'll do my best. Rose left, thinking to herself, This has to go well, doesn't it? Suddenly she met her servant, Olivier, who said, Miss... Rose said nervously, Olivier? What is it? She thought to herself, Is he angry? Olivier approached her and said, I didn't think you would do something like this. Rose felt nervous and thought to herself, How did he find out? Olivier said to her, Can I talk to you for a moment? I didn't think you would do something like this, but this duel with Miss Iris, you've told me this before. Prince Theodore was getting closer to Miss Iris, so Mangastico said you were backing down, and here Rose said, Yes. Prince Theodore and Iris are the ones who should get married. And here Oliver said, If that's the case, then why is this battle necessary? There's no reason to challenge Miss Iris to defeat her, and the real purpose is to allow Miss Iris to win so that you can get the credit, isn't it? And here Rose said to herself, Oliver is as clever as usual. Then she said to him angrily, What's wrong with that? I admired Iris. But Oliver clarified and said, You are a lady from the Charliette house, and regardless of anything, it's incomprehensible that you would lose in the battle. I know this because you've endured countless bitter days. And here, Rose looked at him in astonishment and said, And to prepare you for this truth, Miss Rose,